Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to add new building grids to Survival Game Kit V2. I'm going to be taking you through the process of creating a new grid, adding it to one of the existing build parts. I'll also show you quickly how to make a build part and have it snap to the new grid that we'll create. And I'll show you how to change the grid's location and change its size as well. So to get started, we're going to go to the blueprints folder, then to the other, then to enum, and we'll search for e_grid, sorry, not grid, build type, there we go. And we'll open this up. Now I'll bring us over here. Now we're going to create a new build type because we're creating a new grid. You can call yours whatever you like, whatever best describes it. I'm just going to call mine new grid. Then we're going to save this. Now we're going to jump in and just hit play, and what this will do is force the engine to recompile some things. It may take a second to load in, but once the character loads up you can just hit escape and exit the game. Next we're going to go to the blueprints folder. We can get rid of this search. We'll go to the grids folder. Then we want to find the master grid and do create child blueprint class. I'm going to call mine BP_new grid, but again, you can call yours whatever you like. And I'll open that up. And in the class defaults, we're going to set the grid type to the new grid setting that we just added. So I'll do that. You may also want to enable show grids. This will be useful a little bit later when we're moving the grids about and changing their sizes. So I'm just going to tick that on and we can compile. Next, we're going to go back to the content browser, and in the blueprints folder, we'll search for function and open up survival game SGK functions. And in here, we're going to search for grid, and we want to open up SGK grid classes. And in here, you'll see we've got a new pin for our new grid, and we're just going to set that to our new grid blueprint that we just created, and then we can compile this. Next up, we're going to go back to the content browser, and we're going to search for grid manager, and we'll open that up. And in here, we're going to go to create grid actors, and we'll right click the roof grid, and we're just going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to call mine new grid. It doesn't like that, so I'll just call mine new video grid. Yours will probably be fine. It's just probably because my name is conflicting with something. Yeah, it's actually conflicting with this variable here, so I'll just call mine new video grid. And then in here, we're just going to connect this up to our new variable, and we'll copy and paste new grid and plug that in there. Then we can compile this. Then we're going to go to the select grid actor function, and we're just going to plug in our new grid variable. So I'll plug that into there. Then we can just compile that. Then going back to the content browser again, we're going to search for grid component and open that up. Now this is where we're going to set the size of our grid. So this is going to totally depend on your build part, so you're going to have to sort of decide this for yourself, but to add a new, we've basically got a preset grid sizes here, so the grid component will automatically use this size for all of the grids. So we'll add a new one, and we'll scroll down. You can see we've got one for every type of grid, and they're different sizes. So for our element 10, that's our new grid slot, so we'll set this to new grid, and yeah, you can set whatever size you like. If you're using like a static mesh and you want to know what size it is, I can quickly show you how to do that. If you go to meshes, and we'll just open up say the cube mesh, it actually says the approximate size of your mesh right up here in the top left corner. So if you want to know the rough size of your mesh, you can do that, and then you can actually enter that in here as well. So for this, I'm just going to set mine to 100 in all the directions. But later on, if you do want to change your grid size, you'd come in here and adjust these values here. So next we're ready to actually add our grid to one of the build parts. So I'm just going to compile this. We'll go back to the content browser. Now the build parts are found in the blueprints build parts folder, and then we've got various folders for the different types. For this video, I'm just going to add my grid to, we can add it to the furnace, for example. But you can do this in any blueprint you want, or any build part blueprint you want, but I'm just going to do mine in the furnace as an example. As a side note, I'll quickly show you. If we jump in the wood folder and I just go to the wood foundation, we open up the viewport. Now in the components, you can actually see all of the grid components set up here. So you've got the foundation grids here, here, and here. You've got the wall grids and triangle grids as well as the stair grids. Now if I wanted to, say I had a different size stairs, I could just move this and the grid will actually be in a different position when we play the game. There's a couple of other ways you can change these grids. I'll show you a little bit later. That's a little bit easier to see. But for now, we'll just go back to the furnace. So furniture and furnace, and we'll jump into the viewport. So to add a grid component, we're going to go to add component, and we'll search for grid, and we'll just add the grid component. Now it's probably a good idea to name it. So for example, if yours is a wall grid, for example, you probably want to name it wall grid component. I'm just going to call mine new grid component. It's just easier to keep track of all of them, especially if you have a lot in a build part. So we've added our new grid component like that. And over here in the settings, we need to set the grid type. So I'm going to set mine to new grid. And pretty much everything else is done for us. There are a few more settings in here. You've got the use custom size. So this is, say for example, most of the time you wanted your grid to be the size that it is in the presets, but for this grid specifically you needed a special size, so you could enable use custom size and then set a custom size in here. But we're just going to use the preset size that we used earlier, and those are all listed in here. Because we added them in the grid component, they're just going to apply to all of our grids, so we don't have to change anything about the size in here. We've got attached to build part, so this is useful for if whatever build part's snapping to this grid needs to also attach to this build part. So a good example is the locks, the code locks. They actually have this ticked on their grids, which means that when we build the keypad, it attaches to the door. So when we open and close the door, it moves with the door. Most of the time you probably won't need this enabled, but for example locks on a door, you'd probably want this turned on. Snap rotation offset, this basically adds rotation to the build part when it's snapped onto this grid. And that is pretty much everything. You've got the check radius. This is pretty much always going to be 200. There's a tooltip here that gives you a bit more details, but most of the time you'll never need to change this. So we've added our new grid now, so I'll just leave that in that sort of position and we'll hit compile. And I'm actually just going to drag the furnace into the world. And if we hit play, because we ticked on show grid, you can see our grid's actually visible. Now a cool thing you can do to position your grid is we can open up the furnace, and I'll try and make it easier to see for you guys here. But we can actually move it at runtime, so you can adjust your grids at runtime and see it changing in game, which is quite helpful if you need to sort of get a more precise placement. You can also see the grid size. Unfortunately, you can't change that during runtime. That's something you'd have to exit out and tweak again in the grid component in the preset sizes. But that's essentially how you can position your grids and adjust their location. So next I'm going to show you quickly how to add a build part. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because that's not really what this video is about. but we're going to add a new build part and we're going to make it so that it can snap to this new grid that we've created. So we'll X out of the game quickly. So next I'm going to quickly create a new build part. So to do that, I'm going to go to the build parts folder. I'm going to right click the master build part and just create a child blueprint class. I'm going to call mine BP_new build part. Like I said, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail adding this new build part. It's just to show you how to make it snap to that grid we've just created. If you want more info about creating new build parts, check out the adding placeables video. That has a lot more in-depth detail about this. But I'm going to open up the build part list. I'm just going to create a new row and I'm going to call mine new video build part. And I'm just going to, we'll minimize this a second. I'm going to leave the details and the name the same. I'm going to set the type to our new grid type. So we've got require grid. We're going to turn this on, which means that it has to snap to a grid for us to be able to place this build part. So for this, I'm going to tick this on. You don't actually have to have this ticked on for the build part to snap to grids, but this being ticked on means that we can only place it when it's snapped to a grid. And then the type controls which type of grid it will snap to. So because we've set it to the new grid, it will only snap to our new grid. I'm going to leave these settings as they are. Blueprint class, I'm just going to set to our new build part. I'm going to leave the item costs as they are. And I think we should be okay with all of these settings. Again, if you want more info about these, check out the adding placeables video. But I'm going to leave it as this. So I'm just going to save this. And then we're going to go to the blueprints folder, items, then to the item list. We're going to quickly create a new item. I'm just going to call mine new video item. And I'm going to leave all of this as it is. We'll add an inventory action and we'll set it to place. This just means that we can right click it, the item in the inventory, and the little place option will come up. I'm just going to set the mesh to a bag. And we will go down to the build part details and we'll set this to the, we'll search for it, video, there we go, new video build part. This just means that when we do click the place option, when we use this item, it will try and place the new video build part that we just created. And lastly, I'm just going to set the quick use action to place as well. So if we press the button for the quick slot that it's in, it will just go to place the build part. So now we've done that, I'm very quickly just going to go to the world items folder. We'll just duplicate anything, duplicate the ammo. I'm just going to call it BP new video item. I'll just call it WY. And we'll set the item in here to the new video item. And then we can drag that into the world. And now when we hit play, it might take a few seconds to compile because we've changed a few things. Now when we jump in, we can pick that up, and I'm just going to drag it to the quick slot, and you can see we have an error, and but you can see it is snapping to our grid as it should, but we forgot to set something in our build part. So I'm just going to exit quickly, and we're going to go to the blueprints folder, build part. We're going to find the new build part, and in here all we need to do is set the actual build part here to the one we created in the build part list. So might be at the bottom, no it's not, so we'll just search for video. There we go, new video build part. And that's why we were getting that error, is because we hadn't set this up yet. There were a couple of other things I wanted to show you guys quickly while I'm setting this up. The first one is build collision. Now again, I go into a lot more detail about this in the placeables video, but this is basically the collision that's used to detect if our new build part can be placed somewhere. So to add that, we can just select our root component. Just going to add a box collision. And with our box selected, we'll search for tags. And we're going to add a new tag, and it needs to be build collision, spelled exactly like this, one word with the capitals. And essentially what this is it checks to see if anything's overlapping in this box before we can place it. And if there's not, then we can place it. And if there is, then we won't be able to place it. Now, typically I'd say you want to keep it a little bit smaller than your build part's actual size, just to allow some overlapping things to happen. So that's how you set up that. You can add multiple ones as well. So if you wanted to, you could duplicate this and add as many boxes as you want, just as long as all of them have the build collision tag, it will work just fine. And then lastly, we've got the support component. Now, this is used quite a lot with the walls and stairs and stuff like that. If you want to check how those are set up, you can look at those yourself. But essentially, the support component is used to check if this build part is supported, if it can be placed in the location we're trying to place it. So with the support component selected, there's a few settings. So we've got the supporting build parts. Here you can basically set if the support component detects, say for example, a foundation, then it considers this it considers the build part supported at this point or this location. We can set multiple ones as well, so you could have it set to foundation and floors and various other things. I'm just going to leave mine clear for this video because I'm not going to be using it, but you can set support amount. Now, the way support amount works is basically a build part needs to have a support amount of 1 across all of its support components. So for example, if you wanted it, your build part to have to be supported in say 2 locations, so you can have multiple support grids. So say I duplicated this and we wanted it to have to be supported on both of these support components, what we could do is set them to 0.5. So that way, if only one was supported, then our total support amount would be 0.5 and we wouldn't be able to place. So, you know, if you had 4, you would divide it up by 4 and so on. But if you just wanted one support point, and if this detects supporting build part, you just want the build part to be able to place, you can set this to 1. That's a little bit more advanced, but you can play around with that. Again, you can look at the included build parts at how they use it. The check radius is basically what happens is when we check to see if the build part is supported, we do a check around this location, our support component's location, and this is the size of that check. So by default, it's 1 meter, and we do that to check to see if there's a build part there. Indirect support I'm not going to go into because that's for floors and things like that, but essentially if you're making a floor or a roof build part, you would have this turned on and it would check if the floor that we're attaching this build part to has enough support to support our build part. It's a little bit more complicated with that one, but if you want to, you can look at the included floors and get a little bit better idea of how that works. So that's kind of how the support component works. It takes a little bit of playing around with to get used to, but it's quite an easy way of requiring a build part to have, you know, another build part supporting it. But I'm just going to delete that for now, and we'll just leave it as is. And we can just jump in quickly and hit play, and I can pick up the build part and we'll place it. You can see we can place it, and we can't place another one here anymore because it's already populated. One other thing you can also do, which is quite helpful, is you can pick it up and we'll go to place, and then with it highlighted over the grid, we can actually open our furnace again, and I'll go to the viewport and we'll make this a little bit bigger. You can actually move the grid component in game, and you can see the preview actually updates. This is really helpful if you're doing, you know, quite small precise movements, and you need to see how the build part's going to look in game. If you place it, it won't update anymore. You can see that the grid's actually moving, but the build part isn't. So it's quite good if you just look at it with the preview. So that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully it gave you guys some useful information. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, and thank you for watching.